everybody. I'm Tim Jacobs, and I have the privilege of serving as the district superintendent for this beautiful region known as EFCA West. EFCA West spans parts of 7 different states, and you are in one of them if you're watching this video. And I'm here to talk to you about a new season for EFCA West. I wanted to start off by telling you how grateful I am to my predecessor, Steve Highfill, for his 29 years of faithful and diligent service. I'm grateful that he built what I consider to be a world-class team. People that I get to work with, Bob Osborne and Alex Rivero and Linda Bishop, Sochi Cachone. And since I've come in, now we've brought on Dean Maeda and Steve Salmons. And it really is a phenomenal opportunity that I feel like I've been given to be able to lead this team and to serve you all in this capacity. A little bit about me, because maybe you don't know much about me. I am originally from Southern California, and I've been married to my wife Judy for 22 years. We live in a suburb of Phoenix, Arizona now. And we met and married at a place called the Church at Rocky Peak, which was a large independent church that really shaped who I am today. And I will forever be indebted to them. And we have 3 children. We have Ryan, who is almost 20 years old, and he's a student at the University of Chicago. Cambria, who is 17, who will be going to Point Loma University this fall, and Madison, who's 14 years old, and she loves softball and she loves to bake. But we came out to Arizona to plant a church that is now pastored by Drew Arliskus. And I'm just grateful for him. And then we spent 12 years pastoring Compass Church in Goodyear, Arizona. And you know, when I first took this role, somebody asked me, and one of our pastors, who I greatly respect, he pulled me aside and he said, "Tim, I got to ask you, why in the world did you take this job?" And it's a good question. It's a fair question. And to answer it, it goes back a little ways. And it's what I want to talk to you about today. And I guess to start off, if there was one concept when we talk about a new season for EFCA West, at least what I would hope to see in partnership with you over the years is really what's found in the book of Acts chapter 16:5. One verse that captures the heart of what I hope to see happen in EFCA West. And it simply says this: "So the churches were strengthened in the faith, and they increased in numbers daily." They were strengthened in the faith, and they increased in number daily. That's basically it. That's what I would hope to see. But there's more to it than that. And to answer the question that was asked by this pastor, it kind of goes back to 20 years ago when I was at Talbot School of Theology, and I was in a class that was taught by a guy named Wally Norling. Now, I didn't know anything about Wally Norling, but he would share with us what his thoughts were about life and ministry. He invited each of us over to his home. And I remember individually we would go to his house and he would ask us, he'd say, "What do you want to do with your life?" And I said, you know, if I could do anything, I would plant a church. And I'll never forget, we were sitting there in this little room in his house, and he kind of leaned back in his little chair and he looked over at me after we had chatted for a while, and he said, "I think you'd be a good church planter." Now, I can't tell you how affirming a statement like that is coming from a guy like Wally Norling. The truth of the matter is, I was an okay church planter. We moved out and we did okay. And I learned a lot, but that was really the road that got me into the Evangelical Free Church. And I was lonely, I was kind of tired, I was a little bit confused and jaded as a guy in my late 20s, not sure what was going on with this church that I had planted. But that's not the reason that I got in, or the reason that I even took this role as district superintendent. It actually goes back to something that Wally said in our class, and I'll never forget it, because he was talking about the Evangelical Free Church, and he said it very plainly. He said, you know, evangelical has to do with our message, basically, and the free part has to do with our methodology or our polity. And I love the clarity of that. And I want to talk to you about that for a minute, because when we talk about churches in Acts 16:5, that we're strengthened in the faith and increased in number daily, I don't see any better way forward than what is already in our name, evangelical and free. And I think they're very challenging statements. You know, the word evangelical is taking a bad rap, and in the media and popular culture, it's been very much denigrated. And a lot of times when I get the opportunity to speak in churches and I say that I'm with the Evangelical Free Church of America, I say a lot of people, they think that phrase means free of evangelicals, like gluten-free or sugar-free. And sometimes that's the reason why people show up to an evangelical free church. They see it on the sign or the website and they say, finally, a church that's free of those crazy evangelicals. But the truth of the matter is that word evangelical is very powerful. It basically means good news or good message. And so, if you look at the book of Mark, Mark chapter 1, it says the beginning of the good news, the euangelion, about Jesus, the Son of God, the Messiah. And the whole book of Mark is making the case that what we're about is good news, and we have a Messiah, we have a Jesus who has authority to heal people, authority to cast out demons, authority over everything in the world. So when finally we get to the end of the book and Jesus is hanging on the cross, and the Roman soldier looks up and says, surely this man was the Son of God. Surely he has the authority to do what he says he's going to do. And he forgives us of our sin. It's not bad news, it's good news. And so at our core, if you're an evangelical, you're a messenger of good news and not any of the other trappings that come along with it. And I wonder sometimes if we've forgotten that we are messengers of good news. Sometimes maybe we think we're messengers of bad news, or we're messengers of outdated news or irrelevant news. But our news is good news, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that at our core, that's what we are supposed to represent. And it's good news for everybody, not just for you and for me, but for everybody in the world, for people that we vehemently disagree with, from Antifa to the alt-right, from liberals to conservatives, from whether you're gay, straight, transgender, whatever you are. Even Karen, who wants to talk to the manager, even she is one that needs good news and would benefit greatly from it. And so we have this beautiful message. And then when we get to the free part, it's one thing to say that we're an autonomous church, but when I think of freedom, I actually think of responsibility. When you have the keys to the car, you better know how to drive it or you're going to lose the car. And so it's one thing to say, well, we're a free church. But I like to think of it as the responsibility of carrying the message of the gospel into the location in which you have been sent, And it's a beautiful thing when you think about it. Like, I kind of like the fact that we have this free, because when I think of free, I think of like these people that are these kind of rogue, fearless, gospel-driven people who are stationed in these various localities. And so when we come together at a conference or a meeting or whatever, we share a doctrine and a mission, but we're allowed to be very different, and we should be very different, because we carry within us this burden, this responsibility that no one can tell you how better to reach the people around you than you. And so I love the fact that we're not just a bunch of people who walk in lockstep, and wear the same color polo shirt with a little logo up above and all kind of speak the same language and look the same way, but that we have this beautiful diversity. And I do believe that there is strength in that. Not strength in believing whatever you want, but strength in expressing it in multiple varieties and different ways, and we learn from each other. And I happen to believe that message is really powerful. And so I took this position because I believed that this is an unstoppable combination. The combination of evangelical and free. That there is really nothing like it when it's done right. And so as we look at the future, and right now we're in a time of incredible opportunity, and so many of you have worked so hard over the past year trying to keep up with this dizzying change, this dizzying disruption in how we do church. And I want to tell you that I truly believe that when we look back on these times, you who have stood in the gap and who have preached sermons in front of empty auditoriums and have worked with video and tried to retool everything, and I've heard you as I've had the chance to talk to so many of you, how your burden that you carry in your heart for the people in your midst, and you don't know how much they're suffering, or you know if someone is in the hospital with COVID and you can't go visit them. But your pastor's heart is broken for so many people. And I think that's a beautiful thing. When we look at this phrase of what was happening in the book of Acts, as the church was succeeding, what was happening? They were being strengthened in the faith, and they were increasing in numbers daily. And I think over the past year, while it's been challenging, I think that so many of you have served to strengthen the church that you are in charge of. You've strengthened it. And that's a good thing, but it comes with so little recognition, you know. And I don't know how many of you have been, have had someone come up to you and say, thank you for what you're doing. Too often what you've heard is, you should be talking more about politics, or you should be talking less about this issue, or you should be opening your church, or why are you opening your church? Why are you doing this to us? And I've just never seen so much criticism of pastors. And yet you're standing in the gap where there's so much confusion, bringing the gospel. And that's what I want to encourage you with just several things as we think about this conference of a new season. And as we look at a new season for EFCA West, you know what I hope happens? I hope that we have, like never before, just this tidal wave of leaders who are healthy and who are strong and who have more left over to give because you have shored it up, right? So our believers are being strengthened in the faith because our leaders are being refreshed. Our leaders are refilling themselves and becoming men and women who are trustworthy. I would love to see every evangelical free pastor and leader be someone that the world can look at and go, you know what, I may not believe what you say. I may not believe in what you say, but I believe that you are someone who is trustworthy. And maybe I'll get there, but I believe that I can trust you, even though I might not quite get the gospel yet. And at the same time, we're producing men and women who are healthy. The other thing that I would say that I think is really important is that the churches were not only strengthened in the faith, but they increased in number. You know, there are leaders in your midst right now. There are young men and women coming up through junior high and high school that are in our churches right now that are being overlooked, that no one is paying much attention to. And they're waiting. God is preparing them. And God is raising them up in a COVID world, raising them up in an online world, in an environment that is very, very new to us, but in some ways is all they know. And preparing them to address and to go into the environment that has been laid out. And they have less baggage or less stuff to unlearn than we do. Who are the leaders in your midst? And how can we be training them to send them out? You know, I believe that just as our movement started as a church planting movement, it needs to be a church planting movement again. We need to risk greatly in ways that are productive and profitable. So let me just challenge you with two things. Number one, will you recommit yourself to the message of the gospel? Will you recommit yourself to being an evangelical, a messenger of good news? As Paul said, I resolved to do nothing but preach Christ and Him crucified. Will you do that? Recommit yourself to the gospel and not these other political things or ancillary issues, but say, we're going to drive as hard on the gospel as the world is driving on every other issue. And secondly, will you recommit to being free? To saying, you know, I am going to do what it takes, whatever it takes, however we have to figure things out or change or reinvent to be able to get that message of good news into the hearts of everyone with whom God has placed around us. Every single person. I want you to know I'm so grateful to be standing shoulder to shoulder with you. I believe in this movement, and I believe in our churches and what God is going to do through each and every one of you. Thank you for letting me spend just a few minutes with you today. May God bless you as you continue to pursue him.